Call the meeting to order. Roll call. Director Quayle.
Present.
Director Parrott.
Present.
Director Shopey.
Here.
Director Robinson.
Present.
I'm Director Rowan and I am present. I'd like to welcome everybody. Conflict of interest declaration. Imagine that, I have one, so, in the bill section. Nobody else? Communications and celebrations.
I just asked my principals if they give a short detail of what we're doing when I come back. So
You want me to go first?
who usually goes first?
Usually Jared.
Jared?
That's not fair.
I know, I'll start so you can kind of see what we're doing. Where am I supposed to talk from? Does it matter?
I would go back 6 feet, then you can take your mask off if you get
Can
away
I?
from us.
That'd be great. Okay. Nice being back here. It's been, what, 5-6 months since we had the joy of being here at a board meeting. I guess first of all, I just want to say we've been doing a lot of planning for the upcoming year. I just really want to thank everybody for the job that they've done. Mr. Tolliver's done a great job leading us. The other administrators have been real easy to work with, very flexible. I think our nurses, building secretaries, custodians, and especially the teachers. This we're really pleased with teachers after hearing all of the things that have been going on in some other districts and people not wanting to come back to work. I have not heard that from any of my teachers. They're all really, really excited to be back. They want to get back with the kids, and I think that's a very positive thing. I put a couple of documents in here that you can just look at. I won't go into great detail. And one of them, the first one up there is a letter I wrote home to the parents and kids, just kind of outlining some of the changes that we're going to have to put in place at the beginning of the year because of the COVID-19. And try to put things are going to be different, but I know that we will do fine with them once we get going. I put in our first day schedule, kind of just to show you what that's going to look like for the first day. And once again, we're taking a lot of things that we normally do out. Just any time that we're getting together in big groups, we're taking that out. The kids will be working in smaller groups. And then the next page is our regular class schedule. And really, I think the biggest things there is we are letting out earlier. And before we let out at the end of the day, we are going to go back to their homerooms or Eagle times for 5 to 7 minutes so that we can put things away, clean things, get their masks or shields off and so forth. We're going to try to have the kids go around in the same cohort throughout the day. We've done some major changes in lunch. We put hand washing breaks into the course of the day. So we've done a lot of things to try to make it as safe as we possibly can. And then the last one is just some ideas I'm putting down I'm going to share with the kids on that first day. And we're adding to those all the time, I think. So that will change as we go through. As of right now, we have 13 students that have indicated that they'll be doing online or learning from home at the middle school, which those numbers are pretty easy to work with, I think. I don't know if that's going to change much, but it's been holding steady. I'm going to assign Alyssa Dooley, who's our interventionist. She's going to be kind of the liaison that's going to work with the kids at home. Most of the families, most of the kids are going to be doing work that we're providing them curriculum, and we'll be bringing things back and forth rather than going to the straight online. Most families did not want to do that. I mentioned our PBIS theme. We're doing Hollywood this year, and the slogan is RBMS, where you are the star of our show, and we're going to try to make as big a deal out of that as we can under the circumstances. I want to commend the custodians. Our building is spotless. It looks so good. They've had a little extra time to do things, but floor looks great. They put some new carpet in, fixed some windows. Did some more painting, just really, really looks nice in there. And then we are planning on having athletics as of this moment at the middle school. Whether that changes, I don't know, but Amanda's looking at maybe doing some scheduling changes to make it so that we have less kids on buses or less spectators in our stands, or that's kind of something that's in the works. So, any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't bring anything typed up. I failed miserably. At the high school, we're looking at quite a few different things. You know, we normally do freshman or new student orientation. We're gonna look at integrating that into the first day of school. Because either which way we did it, we just can't have parents coming. Some materials will go out towards the end of the week. There'll be like a video. I'll write up a letter to and send home, so that way the families get that. Looking at virtual learning for students, we do have a handful, I would say anywhere around 10-ish or so that are looking at staying home for school that way instead of coming into the building. So I am reviewing some different programs. We currently have one, but when I go to try to schedule kids, it's not really meeting the needs, especially when you're looking at kids who are looking to graduate. So we have some pretty specific and unique needs at the high school. Like I spent a day looking to see if we could do cohort groups. We can't. So our schedule is gonna run like it always does with the periods in the day. We're gonna increase the size and the space of the lunchroom where kids eat. We're gonna move a lot of the seating into that lower gym, that old gym that is in the basement. We'll go into there and reduce like the number of kids sitting at a table. And then we will, juniors and seniors will still have open campus like they have in the past. Sophomores and freshmen do not. Teacher PD at the start of the year is really just gonna focus on making sure that we are fluid in a transition from one of the 3 learning styles at any given point. Our leadership team met with a group of students, pretty diverse range of kids, in July, and just asked them some questions. You know, what are you looking forward to? What are you nervous about? What are people talking about? And just the biggest thing, one, is the kids wanna come back. They want as normal as possible if they can have it. And then the other thing is they're just nervous about transitioning from like face-to-face to online. And so the focus of the teachers is really making sure that transition is smooth as possible. So we will just be working on making sure that we can go online in a 4-hour notice. So that's gonna be the biggest part of the beginning of the school year, is just making that possible. And we'll be utilizing Google Classroom for that. All classrooms will use that. Students that are choosing to stay home the whole time, you know, all day, we'll be using a different platform. That'll be more of a self-paced instruction. Again, which platform we use, I'll probably know that in a couple days. So, sanitation in between classes, you know, teachers are really looking at being able to clean between classes and try to wipe down surfaces. You know, students being able to do that as an individual would be helpful. And at the high school level, you know, we can do that. They're probably just about as health conscious as we are. So that's a little bit easier, but we just don't have the flexibility because of the credits that kids have to have and the courses they have to really revamp everything. So we tried, but it's not really gonna work. So questions or anything?
One of the questions we'll get at some point is homecoming. We are working on having homecoming activities. They may not look the
Yeah.
exact same, but we're working on it.
The planning has started on the, probably I'd say just the tiny version. You know, normally by now it's huge, but we didn't even get student council selected before school closed. So we hadn't even registered kids, so I was telling John that 70% of our students didn't have schedules 3 weeks ago because we had only gotten freshmen registered and then everything closed down. So the new counselor and I spent a handful of days just, you know, I did all the credit reviews for the seniors. This is what you need to graduate, boom, get them in there. And so now kids are, you know, changing it if they don't like it, which is great. But, you know, that was a huge thing that normally is done in April. So But yeah, I know that some stuff has started to talk about homecoming and how that will look different again. But
When is that scheduled?
end of September, like the
Yeah, we
18th
moved
or
the date
something.
on it because the original date, I mean, they switched our football schedule, so then your home games and stuff, but I want to say then.
September 18th.
Yeah,
So,
18?
yeah, so. Anything else?
Thank you.
At the elementary level, we're planning to try to keep things as normal as possible, but at the beginning of the year, we're really gonna focus on trying to get used to wearing our PPE as much as possible, because for our population, that's gonna be probably one of the more difficult things, is why we're wearing it and how the proper ways to wear it and things like that. We're really gonna focus on getting kids ready to go online if we have to, so getting them used to the platforms that we'll be using. And then also, I mean, the biggest thing, they've been without their teachers and their friends for a long time, so really focusing on relationships and getting kids back, so that, you know, just aside from all the things that are not normal, getting them back to a little bit of that normal that they look forward to when they come to school. One thing to note is we will not be having our traditional unpack your backpack night. That's typically the week before school, I think the Wednesday, the week before school. We will be having a very modified version of it for our youngest students, our kids entering preschool, TK, and kindergarten. And that will be in as much of a controlled environment as we can, where families are signing up for 15-minute time slots. They're coming in. They're asked to bring 1 or 2 parents and no siblings, and they come in through the building. They're going to be directed to their classroom where they can meet their teacher, see their classroom, kind of become acquainted a little bit, and then they're going to exit through the exterior doors so that there's no two-way traffic. Throughout our school day, we're planning to try to keep our cohorts as small as possible, aligning our seating charts in the classroom versus in the library and the lunchroom and the other specials classes where they go. The plan is to try to keep our groups as small as possible and try to do our best not to intermix classes as much as possible. Students will have 3 times where it will be a PPE break, so they can take their shield or their mask off, and that will be at recess, at lunch, and then during physical education class. We figured that would be a good start as far as trying to work with our age group, and also it's tough to wear this all day for a 33-year-old man, but when you're putting it in there for our 7-year-olds and everybody like that, it's going to be a little bit tougher. So trying to keep in mind of our population that we're working with and keeping distance when we can, but just getting used to wearing that PPE and everything and trying to keep everybody safe. Are there any questions or anything?
How are they gonna, for the older middle kids, like, I don't know, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, drop off school supplies? If
So
they gotta
the
bring bigger-
idea is that whatever you can fit in your backpack, you would bring that first day. If you can't fit it all, you bring the rest of it the next 2nd or 3rd day. One other thing that was different, a lot of people do not know their classroom teachers at this time. I know the practice has been to put the lists up at registration. Well, going to an online registration, we didn't have everybody there anyway. But we tried to deter the crowds and the mob of people looking to see where their kid is. The classroom teachers will be writing a letter, kind of introducing themselves and unveiling who your student's teacher will be. That should be coming out in the next, hopefully the end of this week, if we can get them all translated.
We got one today at our place, so. I know
Oh.
some of them went out.
Awesome.
Thank you. Next item is public comment cards, which there's no public, so that works. Item number 7, approval of the proposed agenda.
So moved. Second.
Been moved and second to approve the proposed agenda. Are there any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item number 8, the consent items.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and second to approve the consent items. Are there any questions or discussion? Now, open enrollment, are there any restrictions from county to county? I mean, now we're one of the higher percentage.
They're not, and with the counties we serve, all of them are higher, above the 15%. So the only adjustment they made to it was if you wanted to enroll on one of the online academy schools, you had until July 15th. They extended that date. We didn't have anybody that applied for it during that time. So,
Their curiosity was that if you're in a county that's under 15% and this student is from another county that's above 15%, were they going to start to restrict that? But
no.
now we're in the upper anyway. So.
Yeah, you can't go to an area school that's outside of it. So,
Okay. Any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item number 9, return to learn.
you have a sheet that looks like this, the action report for Return to Learn. We have met over the last, really 3 months with this, but we've had the last month or so, we've had our health committee and our teacher committee getting together. We've rewritten this a few different times. This is our current plan of action. A few changes from last month that have taken place with it. The face covering guidance changed. Before, we were working under the guidance that if your child was wearing a face covering and somebody tested positive in the room, as long as they had PPE on, they would not be quarantined. The governor, when she came out and gave her guidance, the doctor, Padati, said 2 different times that if you're exposed, you'll be quarantined for 14 days. So we contacted public health, we got clarification on it, and they said we need to follow the state guidelines. So now it is if I'm within 6 feet, even if I'm wearing my PPE, I will be quarantined. That changed our plans a little bit. It actually made it more difficult to say we're going to be in school all the time because it gives us a better chance of having to shut down. You still have to go through the tracing of where the child was and how long they were around these people. But that's one reason we went with a lot more of the assigned seats. So it can take a group, but it might only take a group of 6 out. At the high school, it is going to shut you down very, very quick because you have students that move from class to class to class, and one positive test could easily take 30 kids and a teacher with them to be into quarantine. Teachers are considered essential employees. They can, if they're not showing symptoms, they have the PPE, they test negative, they can probably return to the classroom. It's going to be on a case-by-case basis. Students, though, they will probably, my guess is, if they're within that circle for that period, they will have to quarantine for 14 days. Busing, we got a little bit more of busing figured out. We are letting out the middle school and the elementary at 3 o'clock. The high school, we're still going to 3:17. Part of that is you need so many minutes in each class in order to be able to count it for a credit. By doing so, that will allow us to go to the middle school, elementary, pick up elementary kids, town kids, take them to different locations, drop them off, and come back and get another group that will probably be your country kids and your kids that need to go up to the high school. We are going to limit seating to 2 per seat. Depending on your bus, that's going to put you at 32 to 42 kids, where last year we were running about 60 kids on those buses. It will be a work in progress because we don't know how many kids are going to be at each stop once we start the school year. If you look at the guidance with the busing, it says on the very first thing, if a parent wants to drive their student, they can, and it's recommended. If you want to keep your kids safe, you drive them to school, you drop them off, and then you can control where they've been before and after school on a situation like that. The other thing that we just got this morning, we got a letter from Dr. Michael McLaughlin. He said that Wright County is now above the 15% threshold. I don't know yet, or on Sunday night, a news article came out that showed the school districts that were above the 15, or had counties that were above the 15% threshold. We were in it because Webster City or Webster County and Humboldt County were in it. Now we're in Wright. Those are the three counties we have kids in. All three are above the threshold. So what the conversation was is, does that mean we have to do a different plan of action? Once the governor released that, she came back the next week and she said, well, it's not just that, you also have to have a 10% absentee rate. You cannot have an absentee rate until you come back to school and see who's actually absent. So that slowed that guidance down. And then the other thing is they still will look at it on a case by case. She did use Fort Dodge as an example. She said, you have an outbreak in the prison right now. That's why the cases are so high. I don't know what the Humboldt part was. And we've always been teeter. We were at 14.2 the week before. So we have contacted the state, just as the county schools, to say, if we wanted to move into a hybrid model, because that's your next step, is a hybrid model. If you're above 15%, what do we need to do? Do we ask for permission now? So if we get to that, we move into it, and we'll just wait to see what they say on that. So one of the suggestions was, can you delay school? We talked about administration. We're not ready to delay school. People are ready to get back. So we'll get back and see what happens with that. If you delay it, how do you know how long you're delaying it for? You know, we could be in that 15% threshold, especially with on the corner of a county where you've got a bunch of counties. We may never get out of that cycle. So this is the plan. What we will talk to a little bit later is our masking requirement. Once we get the masking requirement done, I will finalize this, and then we will put it out to the public. I talked to Kim. I'll send it to her tomorrow, and this is what we will share with our parents and everybody else. Did anybody have any questions when they read through this, or something that didn't look right? Just in general, I guess. And it's a working document, but once we release it, we're going to follow it unless certain situations or circumstances change us from doing that.
So with staff, and I don't think it's in here, but with staff, you're talking testing. So if they're exposed, they go get a test, they're negative, they can come back to work.
That is our assumption right now, is if they're asymptomatic, there's been an exposure, they get tested.
Are we gonna wait so many days, or because that's part of the process?
It depends on the exposure, because some of it is you have to wait 5 days before you can set it in. So you kind of got to walk through the situation. One of the situations I saw was if it's not a direct exposure, I can keep teaching, right, and I can still take the test and see what happens, because they're essential employees.
Mm-hmm.
Students are going to be a lot more cautious on and say this person needs to quarantine for this many days.
Sure.
At the high school level, are you staggering your classroom dismissals so there's less kids in the room?
No, because then you've got kids clumped waiting outside the other class. You know, like if you've got kids in the room and then kids waiting to get in there, then you've actually made a bigger mess. Since they're covered, you know, hopefully they're wearing something. I mean, obviously that's yet to be decided, but they're in the hallway for 3 minutes. So it's under 15 minutes. And I guess from our understanding, of course, as Jess told you, it changes and it's very frustrating on our end for that, is that it's 15 continuous minutes, you know, under 6 feet. So the hallway is 3 minutes. So hopefully they'll just get to class, which we worked on last year, so.
The high school is going to be the toughest one of all of us with this, because kids are going different directions. We've looked at every scenario possible, and it still comes back to, if you're going to have school, you're going to have school, because if we release these 3 classes early, they all go, they get their stuff ready for the next class, and they're waiting by the door when the next group comes out. You know, unless you're going to kick them out of the building and bring them in, there's not an easy way to do that type of stuff. we are limiting lockers, and we aren't really limiting. They still have a locker they can use, but the kids, last year we allowed them to take backpacks, and very few of them are using lockers. This year they're going to be assigned a locker because they have to put their mask in the locker before they go home, so that they don't go that way. But yeah, I mean, we've explored those ideas. We just can't make it work. So
I just wondered, so.
the other thing is, each kid will be issued, the first day of school, they're supposed to come with a mask. If they don't have a mask, we'll hand them out as we go in. Once they get into their room at the elementary and middle school, actually, I don't know if middle school, their first room they'll go to, they'll have, just like you guys did here, they'll have a face shield that they can pick up, and it's their choice. Each kid will also be issued a lanyard. Nobody's wearing one right now. Heidi, I can't see, yours isn't a breakaway though, is it?
Yes.
Okay, the lanyards are breakaway, so if somebody comes and rips on it, it's not, I mean, so it's not a safety hazard. With their lanyard, they will be able to clip their face mask to it, mainly for the little kids, but I can see it at the high school and middle school too. So as they go throughout the day, if they go to a situation where you don't wear this and you need a mask, it's available. The main key is we're trying to keep them from losing their masks. So if they clip it on there, we know where it is. They can wear the mask home then, put their lanyard on and bring it back the next day. So we do have a lot of masks. We'll have to see if we have enough and how many we're going to keep giving kids. You know, if you have the same kids show up for 15 days in a row without a mask, we're probably going to have to start charging for the mask. These, we don't know the longevity of these. They'll last a long time like this, but if I'm a kid wearing it all day long, do they last a month? Do they last a quarter? We know they're not going to last the year. So we got to we got to live and learn with it just to see what is logical with it. This style has also been purchased for the teachers. This one is a lot more heavy duty. It is going to be their choice of what they want to wear. This one will last the whole year. There's no problem with that. They may wear a face shield and a mask. They may wear a mask. They have to have some type of PPE on, whatever they choose or if they feel more comfortable with is what they need. Is there any more questions on this? If not, then I don't need any action on this, but the next one we will need action on that will be the final piece that feeds into this.
Next item is face covering requirements for students.
So for the last couple of weeks, we have been working with the guidance of when the idea was if you're wearing PPE and the person tests positive and you don't have to be let go of or kicked out of school, that was the carrot to get people to wear PPE. That switched the second we went to regardless if you're wearing PPE, you may have to quarantine. So then the question came into what are our requirements going to be? The two requirements that we have on there, let's see where I put the two options. On a different document, but the one is face shields are required and your parent can sign a waiver just like with immunizations that says you do not have to wear it. And the second one is face shields are required. Both of them are when it's safe and when it's reasonable within a school setting. So the school has some, like what Jared was talking about at recess, we don't know if that's safe. At PE, if you're going to put something over there, over your mouth, is that safe? A week ago, I would have told you I was on the side of allowing parents to opt out. I don't think I'm there anymore when we're all at 15% positivity rate. If somebody has PPE on and they still have to be quarantined, my recommendation was we would require the mask. And staff, we are requiring it. It's just for students. But I need your guidance on which way you would want to go with that so we can write it into our plan. I guess here's the two things. School district requires the wearing of a face shield or mask by all students when appropriate and safe by determining or as determined by the school district. Or the second one is the school district requires the wearing of a face shield or mask by all students when appropriate and just safe as determined by the school district. Just with any immunizations, a parent or guardian cannot opt out of this requirement for their child by signing a form to acknowledge that the student or staff member who their child has come into contact with does test positive for COVID-19. That's not even current guidance because that switched. So now it's, regardless if you have a mask on or not, you have to quarantine.
Now, did that change because we hit 15, or why
No,
did that
that
change?
just changed because Dr.
From the
Biotti
state.
during her,
From the state, right?
from the
Okay,
state, she said it 2 different times. So we said, she's telling people even with PPE, you have to quarantine. Is this the case? So Sandy McGrath at one of her meetings asked that question because, she said if they're wearing PPE, and they said, yes, they still have to quarantine. So our guidance changed on that. And that's why I think you got to go with requirement, because this took all the incentive out of it. If your kid's still gonna have to be quarantined.
Because I think CDC's is also still, the exposure is still 14 days. So
Can our decision be overturned by someone like the governor or?
The governor,
Department
if
or
the,
whatever?
if the governor would come in and say, you have to wear a mask, we have to wear a mask. I suppose if she would come in and say, you don't have to wear a mask, we don't have to wear a mask. Governor or legislator or the Department of Ed could
So, I
overrule
mean,
that.
even what we decide could potentially,
Yeah, we've seen it before. Yes, they could overrule that. If we put a mandate in that says your child has to wear it, we would work with the family, but if you've got a person, let's say my family believed it's their right, they don't have to wear it, then they're probably gonna have to do online instruction.
that's what I was just gonna say. I mean, there's no,
We have the option to do classes online. It's your choice. I know Fort Dodge did not require it. Clarion required it, Belmont required it. I don't know what Humboldt did.
So just to be clear, what you're asking is if the board so desires to approve a policy says you will wear it and there is no opting out.
It's either you wear it and there's no opting out, or there's an opting out.
I'll make a motion that we require a face covering,
With no opting out.
no opting out.
Okay.
That it's why it's in the building and
I'll second.
It's been moved and second to require wearing PPE, I'm presuming that's meaning
Yes.
shield
Face shield or mask.
or mask is required in the buildings and there is no opting out. Any questions or discussion?
So that's just until, I mean, we've always moved to the increase of things, PPE, social distancing, all that stuff. So what happens? I'm hoping we go the other way. Do we just have to, is that just,
That is.
you can no longer require, you know what I'm saying? Like,
You just have to revisit.
I would
or-
put it, yes, at the recommendation of public health or something like that.
okay.
You know,
So that-
or
that-
action of the
way-
board. I mean,
Right.
that's how you'd put that on there.
Right,
And
okay.
there's
And who knows
never a
when
hard
that's
drawn
even
line.
gonna
If
be,
you have
I'm
a
just saying.
special ed kid that absolutely can't wear it, then we're gonna find we're gonna work with the kid. But if the guidance is you have to wear the mask, Jared's not wearing the mask, I can pull Jared out of class, I can call his parents and say, hey, if he's gonna be in class, he has to wear the mask. And the argument of, well, we don't want him to wear the mask. Tell me why. Give me a reason why. And if he's not gonna wear it, then we have to find an alternative setting for him so he doesn't put other people in.
and I think that's the whole part of it is not only just them, but it's everybody else's safety
Yeah,
that we have to look out for
but
in the
if
school setting.
we have a spread that goes through our school, it shuts us down. If it gets 3 of our teachers, our schools are closed. Because, I mean, they just see so many kids. So,
Any other questions or discussion?
I guess I would just speak on the teachers we have. There are a handful, I couldn't give you the number, but there are numerous that I think would feel better if they knew the kids had to wear them, because they're very concerned,
Rightfully so. I
right?
mean, and I think it's the board's responsibility to make it safe for everybody, or attempt to make it as safe and.
Because we got options, we've got other options for families if they really don't want that.
I mean, here's the example, and this was brought to my attention. We require people to change their clothes when they come to school if it's not appropriate. So what's the difference of whether we require a mask? I mean, if they come with too short of shorts or a shirt that's not appropriate, we make them leave or change that. So what's the difference of the school says, hey, listen, if you're going to come to our facilities, you're going to wear a face covering of some sort. I mean,
well, and they have the option of this or this.
exactly. I'm not saying, yeah.
That's kind of the idea that we sell to parents is if you don't like this, because this can be uncomfortable after a while. If you don't like this, you can go to this. If you don't like this, I don't care if you switch back and forth. You know, you're gonna have both of them on your person, so.
The reality of the situation is somebody is probably going to test it.
Oh, 100%
That's
they
just
are.
the nature of the beast. It's going to happen, but at least if the board comes up with the guidance, then you have something to fall back on that will reinforce the policy. And that's why the request of the board is to come up with a policy so that there's something to base it on. So
When we did our surveys, 70% said require, 30% said don't. When you did the teacher survey, it was about that same rate, 70 to 30. If you look at on a statewide level, it's about 70-30. I have had parents that have called and said, if you require a mask, I will not send my kid. I've had parents called that said, if you do not require a mask, I will not send my kid. So, I mean, it's on both sides of it. And that's why you get 5 minds to make that decision versus their administration.
any other questions or discussion? Okay, the motion is to require every student to wear PPE. So all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There's your guidance.
There's their answer.
Item number 11, bus routes.
Okay, so bus routes, I kind of went through it with the last time. We're gonna run the same 7 bus routes we have before. The idea is, for the most part, buses will drop off the first kids at the high school about 7:30. Then the elementary about 7:35 to 7:40. Then they will go and run a second loop and pick up the kids. They will actually go out, they'll get the country kids, they'll go to the neighboring communities, bring those kids back, drop off at the high school, drop off at the middle school, and then each of them will run to another big stop that's in town and pick up kids there. We're estimating on times right now. We've got to actually see what the times are. We do know that kids are going to want breakfast, so we have to have them at the elementary school and the middle school by, 7:55 in order to eat. Right now, how it sits, we have one bus that's dropping off there about 8, and we'll have to find a way to speed that up so we can get them a little bit earlier so they can get their breakfast in them. Trains, we kind of got to see how trains work with that, and we got to see how many people are at each stop. If we have stops that, we don't know where our growth is. We haven't seen students in so long. Last year, you had the trailer park, 4th Street East, 4th Street West, the church, the daycare. Those stops were all dropping off the library, probably 20 to 25 kids. That's the assumption we're going on, but if you have a side of town that's growing a lot, your guys' side of town, we used to not even have to take a bus out there. There's probably 10 kids in that neighborhood now. So if that route used to go out and kind of pick up a few country kids and come back. If it has to go through there and you guys fill it up, they can't stop at one of those stops that have 20 kids on them anymore. So we're still trying to figure out who's riding the bus and that type of stuff. But the idea is that we will do 2 loops. We'll pick up the first round and then we'll go and we'll pick up the second round and hopefully have every kid there by 7:55. So there will be probably additional costs because our routes are going to be longer.
I was gonna
Both
say,
pick up and
this
drop off.
kind of talks about assigned seating too, so that, will you have to kind of be fluid with that if you kind of see things changing?
Yes,
Because this says you're gonna try
there's
to
2
keep
reasons
them
you have the
in the same-
assigned seating. The first one with assigned seating is if you have a sibling group get on, they sit together. So when my 2 kids get on, my kindergarten and my first grader, they will sit together. So one thing, they don't contaminate each other. If you have an assigned seat and John tests positive, Aaron and I are gone. And we know where we sat. So that's going to keep the kids from moving. If you don't have an assigned seat, he sits here and then he jumps over and sits by you and then sits by her. He's taking out the whole group. So that's going to be the first week probably where we're assigning seats and figuring out. And then we're going to find out that Aaron sits in the back. He screws around the whole time. So he's going to be moved to the front. So it's fluid. I mean, it's not locked in, but our classrooms are going to be the same way.
Our case, we got 3 families out there. Let's just say after week 2, they decide we're not going to ride the bus anymore. So now, you have more room.
You have more room for seats.
Somebody
The other
else, and
thing
you're
that
gonna have
happens
to kind
is
of figure that out.
you have kids that will not start riding until about October because it's nice right now and they'll walk and it's easier to walk. Once it starts getting cold, you have extra kids show up at the bus stops. We've talked about, do we need to have another bus on standby? My answer right now is no, not yet, but you might.
It just seems like a big challenge.
Well, at the
Right
middle
now.
school, so one of the things we ran into was if we dismiss the high school and they all run over to the elementary for practice, I've just brought in all my athletes, another 50 kids, and put them in the high school where I haven't had that cross contamination yet. So we said, well, that's okay, we'll hold them, and they cannot go into the elementary till 3:30. By 3:30, I should have all my students cleared out. My teachers can either be in the rooms with their doors shut, or they're gonna have to wait for 5 minutes before they go out. Then Scott said, what about the middle school kids who are going to the high school? Well, you're right, so now we gotta worry about that. So that bus is actually, they're gonna get on a set, actually, they're gonna walk. But if there is rain, we are actually gonna have to have an additional bus just to pick those kids up and get them over there if the weather's not cooperative, so. I guess, does anybody have any questions on that? We think we got a plan.
So do we need approval?
I don't probably need it. I probably don't even want action on it because I may want it to be fluid.
Especially.
Yeah, because if we lock into it and I want to make a change, I don't want to have to wait till the next month, so.
Any questions on that?
Any idea how much longer, as far as time, will take per driver? I mean.
Okay, so last year, because we did, if you drove I did the sub route, so I learned a lot about busing, but if you drove the Woolstock route, you left at 3:10 and you didn't get back till 5:15. If you drove the route that went to this side, you had just as many kids, but you're done in 15 minutes. You did 3 stops and dropped them all off. So we had the conversations about what do you do for compensation for these bus drivers that are working an hour longer every single route? So we put in it that if a route is consistently over an hour and 15 minutes, as recommended by Dwight and approved by me, then it gets a $5 differential per route. That was before any of this started, but that's the same guidance we'll use. Because if your route consistently is more than an hour and 15 minutes, you automatically bump up to the $5, and that should compensate for it.
Anything else? Item number 12, my favorite one. Appoint equity and affirmative action coordinator for programs and multicultural non-sexist education coordinator for 2021 school year.
Scott Jeske has done this for 10 years. He's an expert at it. I would recommend you keep that the same.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to appoint Scott to that position. Are there any questions or discussion?
Scott, you will have to send out some type of note. You know, we always did it at the in-service, but that one change too, I guess this is off this, but at in-service, we are not putting everybody in the group together. I'll explain that during my soup thing. So you will have to do some notification difference there.
Any other questions or information? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Item number 13, facility space update.
Okay, there's one action that needs to go with this. We will start letting for bids the remodel of this upstairs. Most of it is mechanical versus looks. We will take out all the ceilings, we'll put new lights in. We will update the ventilation system so it has ventilation. We will update the fire system so the fire system meets the state standards. We'll have everything done so we can put kids into it. This would be a stage 1. If we, and we're gonna need it, or he's got a big class in 8th grade and she's got a big freshman class and we're bursting at the seams right now at the high school. If we decide to go with stage 2 would be another building on the other side of this, just like this, that would complete that project. It would have the elevator and those type of things in it to make this work. That would actually go into your future planning of what are our options for the high school and that type of stuff. But this is stage 1. This is what we are going to use our TIF money for, that we got when Prestige came to town and we were involved with that. It would give us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 classrooms upstairs that are greatly needed at the high school right now. I'm guessing we could use 3 of them immediately, just to get some overflow issues out. And when you bring up the next class next year, we will need it. So the bids will come out. As long as the bids come in where they're expected to come in, we have the money to finance it. And we're on that 3-year time frame where we have to spend the money anyway to get it done. We can get that done, and hopefully second semester of this year, and for sure by next year, we can get students into this building. The second part that I need action on is we need to have a public hearing, which our next board meeting is September 4th at 14th, sorry, September 14th at 6 o'clock to we just have a public hearing on the project. So I need a motion to set that public hearing on the project at 6 p.m. At that time, we'll know what our bids are, and we can make a determination if we want to move forward with it. So
I'll make that motion, September 14th, 6 p.m. for the public hearing.
Second.
It's been moved and second to set the public hearing for September 14th at 6 p.m. Are there any questions or discussion? And even if we set it at 6 o'clock,
It's okay if it's 6:15.
okay,
It just can't be before 6.
just can't be.
Yep.
Okay.
And maybe this isn't the time for that, but I'll wait till this is done. Take it through this part.
Okay. Are there any questions or discussion?
now you probably ask it, because otherwise it'll be on.
I was just gonna ask about the taxes, how is that gonna affect us
Does
now?
not affect taxes.
Okay.
This is.
No,
money-
I mean, so I understand the money's already there. The money that Prestige is asking to put on hold for their employees, for them not meeting their stuff. How is that gonna affect our tax roll?
I don't
If they
know,
waive that.
I know what you're asking, and I don't know enough about it, if they're asking to forgive the evaluation, or if they're asking to forgive what they put in, for what the county collects. But if it probably won't come off their evaluation,
Okay.
so it won't, I mean, every time there's a change, then it affects everybody's
Sure.
tax rolls, but I don't think it will affect their evaluation.
I'm just looking at our further ahead because
Yeah. It's something that we would have to know. I still believe you cannot look to do anything major till winter of 2022.
Yep.
So it gives you time to plan, but I don't know. That's a good question on that.
Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Item number 14, property purchase.
We put in a bid to buy Bernie Tillion's property, 17.5. There are closing costs on top of it. That bid has been accepted. I'm not sure when it will go through closing and all of that stuff with it. What I do want is a permission to write a check for $18,017. So when they say we're ready to close, I have the funds available. So I guess I need the permission to board approval to purchase that property for $17.5 with the closing costs for a total of $18,017. We will tear down the house. We own the 2 lots beside it. If we need immediate growth, that gives you a place to do something. If you don't, it gives you green space that's separating your rows of houses from our property that we have a lot of kids that walk on that area. So
what is the plans for house? Are we gonna take bids or what are you gonna do?
to tear it down,
Yeah.
I don't think it will be that expensive.
Yeah,
But I will take bids. I will just ask a couple different people to give me a quote on what it costs to clear the house. I don't even think there's a basement in it. True. I don't know. I shouldn't say that. I don't know on that. But,
Has the title opinion come back yet?
no.
They
All
haven't
I've
done
been,
anything.
yeah, all I've gotten is accepted. My fear is, if you remember how it sat before, it had some safety issues with refrigerators and stuff like that. Now you've got an abandoned house with kids walking by it. I've got to get the property gone, so I don't have to worry about the safety of kids.
I don't think it's an issue of whether we purchase it. I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Been moved and second to approve the proposed property purchase. Are there any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Item number 15, online learning agreement.
We do not need this. This is what we used when they had the Iowa Learning Online, and the governor did not fund that this year, so it's not an option. So we don't need to worry about that one.
Item number 16, purchases over 25,000.
None at this time.
Speeds things up.
Good job.
Item number 17, handbooks to include the good conduct policy.
Okay, so we've got handbooks for our middle school and high school at this time, I believe. We need those approved, but the good conduct policy, and I can let Heidi speak a little bit, it has changed a little bit, but there's also a question that Rich has relating to the good conduct policy going into this year. So I think we're gonna do it two different things here. So do you want to explain just the good conduct policy and some of the issues we had and what was driving your changes with that?
So the good conduct policy, we, struggled. I didn't write it. I didn't, and I don't think Rich wrote it either. It was a challenge to adhere to it and be consistent. We also discovered having a lawyer look at it. I know Mr. Oliver had one of our lawyers check it at one point, and sorry, this keeps coming up. It was inconsistent. Like one page said this, and the next page said something different, and so that made it really hard as administrators to enforce it consistently from one situation to another. So we decided that we were going to revamp it. There was pieces of the current good conduct policy that we liked, like the committee. So we kept those pieces, and then we changed other things, and then some of it was just rewriting to make it more clear. So that way, the what if situations that always pop up that really screw up every policy, that we could try to manage. We wanted to have a little bit more committee work with it. Our original plan was to have one of you guys on the team along with coaches and teachers. With school closing, that didn't happen. We had already done a lot of discussion and kind of tucked that in our back pocket for the rewriting, but so what we have is we changed the consequences a little bit. We also changed options for reducing the consequences. We had the honesty clause before. We also added a clause for getting treatment. When you get 5 vape charges all in a row, there's definitely an addiction issue. So we figured, I had seen that in other districts where they had an option for receiving treatment. And so we decided to add that in, because that's the ultimate goal, I guess.
Did you get rid of that prom and?
No, that's still in there.
Okay.
The dances are still in there.
You guys make the decision on, I have an issue with how it reads is if you are not out for a sport, you miss prom.
Well, how we did it was we did, in order to take away like who picks what, it's in order of the event. So if a student violates it, their consequences for 2 weeks, and they have to miss a minimum of 2 events and a maximum of 4 for a 2-week span. And it'll go by the order in which the events occur. So no one gets to pick, well, I'm gonna take it from this season and not that. It's just straight up how they occur. If, like you might get, say a student who is on dance team and basketball, and they perform those 2 things in one night, that's one event. But otherwise, that's one event date, so that's 1 out of the 2. But it just goes in order, so it's just how it lands. There was a lot of debate about prom not being involved or prom being involved. With some kids, that's all the dance is all you have. With others, it's the sports. We just kind of looked at it. We did define, gotta find my page here, too many books open, but, we try to define like what an activity is.
And that's the question, is prom an activity or not? I would argue that it's not. I think it falls under the graduation. The idea of, when we looked at it last year, and that's where the lawyer kind of came in and said, some say dances, some say they don't say dances. If I do not play a sport and I get a good conduct, the idea is, well, then I have to miss something. But prom, in my opinion, is more of a junior senior right than an activity that you're participating in. I don't know. My personal feeling is, I don't know if we're in the place to punish, to where we're looking to punish a kid. If you sign up to play a sport, you choose to follow those good conduct policies. If you do not sign up to play a sport, that's between you and your parents. And so that's kind of my theory on prom. I have a hard time saying, John, you didn't play any sports, you missed prom. Aaron, you can sit out a basketball game, but you still go to prom. So I personally would remove prom from that and leave that as, if your parents want you to go to prom and we have it, you go. If you go there and you do something illegal, we're kicking you out. But prom is not an activity, it is a junior senior event. I don't care if you missed the homecoming prom, but our homecoming dance, the prom I have an issue with.
Are we still on a 3-strike system?
It has 4 layers, and the 4th violation has 16 calendar weeks with a minimum of 16 events and a maximum of 32. We didn't go with you're done. We figured that 4th layer is probably pretty significant, but they have the ability with the honesty clause and the treatment to reduce it.
Because in the
Tricky
past,
part, like the whole vaping has turned everything upside down. I mean, we had kids that got busted seriously 3 times in 1 week, and they're freshmen. So theoretically,
vaping is
they're
what
never
turned
going to
it
be
cool.
able to, under the old policy, they'll never be able to participate. And sometimes that is the only thing that will hold a kid at school. That coach or that sport is the thing that you use to finally get their eyes open to, I don't know, it's hard.
because in the old policy, it was 3 strikes and you're done for
Yeah.
your high school career. I had a little bit of a problem, and there was no adjustment for treatment back then either.
Right.
Like Jess said, we're not in the punishment business. We're trying to keep these kids going. So it sounds like it's a lot better than it was.
Yeah, we cleaned up even just the order by which things occur in the policy as it's written. It's a little bit more fluid in terms of this, then this, like how do you have a finding that, what is it that triggers me to even start looking? And it talks about like determination, where is it? Definition of a violation, describes what it is. And then it goes into how do you determine if a violation is there? If I get a little note left on my desk, little Joey was drinking in the bathroom, like, obviously if it's on school property, I can go investigate, but if this is little Joey was, drunk on Saturday night, what am I gonna do with that? So we kind of cleaned up of what does it mean if someone is gonna give you a tip or whatever, like, it can't be anonymous. I've had that happen to me before. You get this anonymous letter out of nowhere and then you have to chase it down. It's ridiculous. I mean, it's just a goose chase from no place fun. So we kind of cleaned that up on what it looks like. Social media is just evil for this, and it can be so hard. Like we'll get pictures and then it's like, well, how do you know that's really alcohol? How do you really know if they're drinking that? How do you know it's not doctored? Because some people are really good at doctoring pictures, so that can be really tricky. So we kind of talked about that there with, and then just even cleared up evidence, the standard of evidence, it's more likely than not that it occurred, not this, beyond a reasonable doubt that you need for a criminal. So we had to kind of clean that up because sometimes people, expected it to be the criminal level and it's not. And then we walk through what the process is, so like I would talk to the kid and if they confess right away, then it's pretty much just write it up, assign that, and you're done. But if they don't use the honesty clause, then it's handed over to that committee, and we cleaned up who's in that committee. There was some kind of weird descriptions in certain places in the old one, so we shored that up, and then, here's what the committee's job is. Even talked about how to go about appealing all the way up to you guys,
With
So I'm looking at this right now. First violation, a minimum of 2, maximum of 4. But then it goes down and it talks about reduce 50% for the honesty, I think, and there was something with the coach. So does that mean it starts at 4 and it can be reduced to 2 by these 50% things? Or how do you come up, or does 2 get reduced even farther on the
The
first
2
offense?
can get reduced to 1, so it's a 2-week window for the first offense. So in that 2 weeks, however many events they have, it has to be 2 events. So if it's not, it'll extend out. So let's say you hit the end of a season and there's only 1, and now you got a 3-week window before the next season starts, it'll spread. So they have to sit a minimum of 2. But if they're a really busy kid and they got 6 different things going on in a 2-week span, we will only make them sit 4. And then if you invoke the honesty clause, that'll get cut in half.
You also have different seasons and how many games you play. And so like football is, you really only have one opportunity to play on Friday night unless you're on a freshman and sophomore team. The other thing with the honesty clause that we had a lot of discussion with last year, you will have a kid that will come and say, I was drinking last Friday. That does not happen very often. What usually happens is we get a report that Darren was drinking last Friday. So then I go and I say, were you drinking last Friday? Is it honesty if he tells us? If you open it up to, I say, you got one chance. Were you drinking last Friday? And he says, yes, I was. He falls under the honesty clause. If he doesn't, now we're going to run you through the committee, and that is not on the table. But I just know from the time I was an administrator, it worked a lot better when I could say, Tracy, I'm going to give you 5 minutes to think about this. I'm going to leave the room, and then I'm going to come back and ask you this question, and here's where you can make an adult decision. That's kind of what we're leaning towards. I can put it out there and say, tell me the truth or don't tell me the truth, and that's where the honesty clause comes in. So.
Huh? No, my
What you gonna
struggle
do?
just, and as a parent, and things too, has always been that first offense, there's really not much. If I get caught, I don't have to sit very long, so it kind of, there's not a discouraging, that's just been my experience with.
There's been
in the
some that
past.
say first offense is nothing. If you do the honesty
Exactly,
clause,
so they're
it's
just gonna take the chance
Yeah.
because
You get
I'm
a
not really
freebie
gonna
and then
get
you get
penalized the
hammered on the
first time.
second one.
And that's what I was trying to
Yeah.
see, or if there's a little more to it to.
Anytime you work with a good conduct, it's a disaster because there's so many people that have different ideas and why is the school playing the parent, and then are we supposed to play the parent? It kind of comes down to, at least from a sports standpoint, when you decide to play a sport, you sign a piece of paper that says, I will follow these rules. Outside of that activity, I don't know what control we have as a school district to play that role.
So if the good conduct says you have to sit out 2 games, but the parent says, no, you're out for 2 weeks regardless of how many games it is, does the parent overrule the? good
Parent
conduct
goes over
policy?
to school. I feel like
Oh,
that.
yeah, that'd be whatever.
And we're still a teaching institution. You're trying to say if you put your name on the paper, you're still responsible for your actions after. When John was talking about the no forgiveness, we literally had students, not one, multiple students that would get 2 to 3 vaping in a 1 week, 2 week time frame. They've got other issues. And I can remember meeting with one parent saying, if your student wants to play football next year, you come talk to me and we will work with the board to see what we can do, because I mean, they were done, and that was over probably a 2 or 3 day period. They had other issues we needed to worry about. So,
And keeping them coming back, exactly like she said. I mean, you
and
talk
they're
to a
always
lot of,
freshmen, not always, but most of the time they're young.
Last
You talk
year,
to
that's
these kids
who
even when they
was
get out of high
young-
school.
young kids.
that we deal with. I mean, a lot of them say the only thing that kept me going back to school was I got to play football or I got to play baseball.
Or a coach.
Oh, yeah.
Or, yeah, because they didn't care about school. They didn't care about graduating. They just either wanted to play or that one person
And it's
talked them
not,
into coming back. And
it's
so,
not just sports, we've got activities on here because we realize, obviously, sometimes sports gets the glaring light, especially with this issue, but, it's other issues too. So what we wrote was if you're in activities So maybe you're in band, well, if this event is related to your grade, you go and you do it, but if it's extracurricular, like if they go on a trip somewhere, like say go to Adventureland or whatever, and that's just an extracurricular, you know, this will be fun, we're gonna do this as a group, that could count. You know, so if it's not related to a grade, some schools speech, you know, the whole speech competition stuff is part of a grade of a class, and other schools it's extracurricular, so we kind of define some of those things with that.
And in the past, when we've had issues, it usually was an underclassman, and then with that time 3 strikes, you're done. You know, they got a couple more years, and then they did create problems. And under the old policy, we had no wiggle room.
Yeah.
You know, it is what it is, so.
I think they're just still developing relationships and, you know, just that peer connection too when they're young, so, you know, you take all that off the table and you take all those positive influences off the table, what else do you got left? Because 9 out of 10 times when we save a kid, it has something to do with some adult that is connected to them with something that they have in common, and it's oftentimes a sport or an activity.
So do we have a motion to approve the handbooks to include the good conduct policy?
And then I want to know which way you want to go with prom. Are you defining prom as an activity or as a rite of passage? I don't know if that's, I think you got to determine that first and then make a motion on the book. Which way you want it listed in that.
Okay, so you have 2 options. You can approve.
So in your list here, the only one you're saying you think should be taken out of.
I don't have the
prom.
list in front of me.
Well, you have homecoming, winter formal,
And then prom.
The prom's the only one I'm worried about in that. In my opinion, prom is a rite of passage. It is not an activity.
because you only have juniors and seniors.
You're not
It's
signing up for it.
Yes.
You're not signing up for it. You attend, and you don't have to attend. We have kids that do not attend prom.
So you
That is
can,
very true.
so you can make a motion to approve the handbooks with the good conduct policy, including prom, or to.
Can I speak on behalf of Rich and I just on that? Okay, I was prom director for 10 years in Mason City. Prom is no fun for kids if there are kids that are drunk and high there. 1 year, we arrested 5 kids that were drunk. I personally sniffed many of them down because I got a good nose. The next year, the board moved to breathalyze every kid before every dance. I thought our prom numbers were gonna drop because of it. Nope, they went dramatically up because kids were like, I'm happy that people are not gonna puke on me, you know, and I can have more fun. So while, yes, I do think it is a rite of passage, I would agree with Mr. Tolliver, and Mr. Thacker and I probably are more on the same page as why we put it in there, but, you know, I'll follow whatever you guys decide, I'm okay with that, but like our personal opinion is supervising it is no fun if you're wondering if the kids are doing illegal stuff there. It's way more fun when you can have some level of confidence knowing that.
But if I have it in my good conduct policy, it does not guarantee a kid doesn't show up
No,
drunk.
it doesn't,
It
but
takes a kid that got in trouble and keeps
Yeah.
him from going it. I
yeah,
had, because of this, over the last couple of years, I've had several calls where parents have called to complain about it, and I agreed with the parent. You know, they said, well, I'll take this all the way to the board. I couldn't argue with them, because I don't think it's an activity. Are we gonna kick them out of graduation next? You get a good conduct and you don't play, all we're doing is punishing the people that don't play any sports, because everybody else has a chance to get rid of it. Unless you get it right before prom. You know, if you get it the week before prom, then you miss prom. But you could have, if Aaron and I both get one during football season, and he's out for a sport, he's putting a tux on and going to prom and getting pictures. I'm not, because I decided not to play sports. I don't think that's fair to the kids.
Have the courts made any decisions on, this sounds like something that has gone to the courts.
No, it's school policy that determines it.
Huh?
It's school policy that determines
Well,
it.
I'll bet somebody's taking it to the courts.
Even in the
Probably
current
right.
status we are at, if they, and my advice was appeal it to the board, because if it comes up to the board can still overrule, even if it's in your policy. Most of the time, you're gonna say, we're gonna follow policy, we're gonna rewrite policy though. But, yeah, I don't know on that one.
I guess I would look at it, if we're gonna take prom out, you take all dances out. Either take the dances out or you have them in, because one, prom only addresses juniors and seniors typically. And then, but the homecoming and the winter formal addresses the whole grade spans, and last year, most of our issues were with the underclassmen. I mean,
Well,
we
and
had a
I would be
couple-
fine taking all the dances out, because if you missed a dance versus missing a basketball game, I'm not sure that's equal either. I still go through, we're not the parent.
Right,
The parent is the parent, and if I got caught drinking, my dad would probably say, you're not going to the dance. But that's not my call, that's their call. On the side that if you show up to the dance drunk, call the police.
right.
I'm not gonna babysit you either, there's an answer for that too. If I think you're drinking, I'm calling the police.
And then it goes right back to the good conduct policy, but you will also have juvenile court involved.
Yeah.
So they're always gonna have some sort.
Believe me, I hate good conduct violations. I do. I really hate them. So everybody's just gonna be really good this year. We're not gonna have any. So I don't, that's just our tidbit.
And what you guys decide, we will enforce.
It's fine.
I feel like you have to take all dances out. Because how is winter formal any more different than prom, other than it encompasses 9 through 12? And 9th and 10th graders can go to prom as long as they
Winter
have an
formal
upperclassman.
people, grandma doesn't worry about as much as prom.
Right,
And prom is a more formal event. That
right,
is-
but I'm just saying, I don't think that winter formal is no more of an activity than prom is an activity.
Yeah, I agree with that. I have no problem taking all the dances out.
So if you're taking one out, I think you have to take them all out. That's my personal.
So do you want to make that a motion that you're going to approve all this stuff and removing all dances from the penalty phase of the good conduct policy?
Yes. So moved.
Do we have a second?
I have, go ahead. I have another question, but we can do it after that.
There is. Did you look this up first? Scott?
He's looking at me.
I'm looking right now.
I'm reading the lawsuit right now,
Yeah.
and the appeals court actually overturned it. Prom is not a, I haven't read it all, but I read the highlights, and the appeals court actually overturned it, it looks like. That prom is not a sport.
Do we have a second before we start doing two report?
I'll second it.
Okay, now discussion.
My question, it just dawned on me too, homecoming and National Honor Society. Does that have anything to do with, say, homecoming court and being inducted into National Honor Society? Because I know when my child was in high school, there was a girl in her class that got caught good conduct. She did not get inducted into NHS because of it. So I don't know if that
I think there's.
addresses that, and would the same thing if they were on the homecoming court, would they potentially be penalized if it fell into that 2-week or 4-week period or whatever?
My opinion is homecoming court is still not an activity. It's an honor. National Honor Society can be an activity. I know student government is an activity. So if I'm in student government, when I'm serving my penalty, I can be pulled out of student government. Heidi can give her opinion on
Is it
So-
that.
National Honor Society, though, doesn't that's a vote of like your faculty and everything else.
And they have their own,
They have their own guidelines and
But
I know-
I don't think would automatically,
But Megan's, she
Get rid
had
of,
a classmate. that
It
did not
probably
get-
would do it if you were in the process, but once I'm in, I don't think it would kick me out.
She,
But if they had meetings, it would kick me out.
no, hers was, she had been approved to get in, got
It
caught,
was during that phase.
and did not get inducted that year because of the good conduct
There
policy.
are-
So that's where I
There's
just,
a
I just
list of
remember that.
standards that you meet, because I kind of remember looking at that one too. But I think once you're in, as long as the activity's not meeting and doing stuff, I don't think it would.
So that's, I
Some
didn't know if there
schools
needed
will
to be
remove
clarification here.
if you get a good conduct violation and you were in National Honor Society, some schools will remove them because I think the
In the home.
Because it's the
bylaws of
character and
National Honor
things, yeah.
Society kind of indicate that. One piece too, I guess, when we were looking at this, the whole idea behind the good conduct policy, at least from Rich and I were talking, is you're representing Eagle Grove in these things publicly. So if that kind of helps put things into perspective, so then, some of the things on this list could be argued. But I would say the majority of them, the idea is the student is putting on our colors, our name, Eagles, and they're going to someplace else and they're representing us, you don't represent well if you're into trouble all the time, or I guess I can't use all the time, because you do good conduct once doesn't make you all the time trouble, but, so that's kind of the aspect here, so I mean, I guess that does go towards the argument of the dances too.
It seems to me, this going back to my legal training as being an administrator, that it was because of that reason that the courts have at some point ruled that kids can't be kept out of prom because you're not representing your school.
And that's, she's looking at enforcement. I'm looking at where I'm gonna get the lawsuit or what's gonna come up to me. I don't see how you can call prom an activity.
I think
That's where I can agree with you, but I can also feel like, sometimes, I don't know, that's where I'm at out here.
Let me ask you this, do the kids that are not out for sports sign a good conduct policy? No, they don't. So how can you hold them to the good conduct policy?
Good point.
Because we sign it at each sport, you're right. I
In
mean,
sports, you do it, but that's the only time you do it.
But you do it for every one of them, not just everybody at the beginning of the year to.
No, you just have to do it once. But kids that are not out for anything, they don't ever have to sign it.
That's true.
No, I'm saying Bubba does one at cross country, he did one at basketball, and he did one.
Those
at
might be team
track,
rules too.
Kind of thing.
Here's the thing is I think where we're getting away from it is these are all extracurricular activities. So, and that's essentially what the courts have looked at is what's extracurricular activities,
And they said prom was what?
not.
Not.
So the state board reversed the local boards from banning them from prom. And of course, this is a long time ago. In the district court, the state board reversed on appeal. The reasoning was prom was not an extracurricular activity. And then the state board, or the district court overturned the state board's decision on appeal. So they actually were banned then.
Yeah, that would have been.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
I
And
think
by
they
the
were-
time prom's over, it's all done.
Yeah, it's, yeah, lack volunteer. Okay, so it lacked the volunteer, that's why it was there. I got all confused. But, yeah, but then commencement is not an extracurricular activity. However, the school district still can prevent a student's attendance but only for disciplinary, not for,
Yeah, it'd have to be pretty severe.
Good conduct, yeah.
This is why good conduct policies are so much fun.
yeah.
Well, I mean, we have been to the state over a good conduct policy, and at the time, the state upheld the board's position.
Sure.
But they could have not upheld our position. We evidently made a good case for it, but even at that time, they could have taken us on to court beyond that point, and they did not. But again, it's a vulnerability for the district, and that's why we need to have something and then adhere to it as best we can.
Yeah, if it's not written in the policy that way, it's hard for us to make adjustments as it goes up.
So that's what the main part of this whole thing was cleaning up, like identifying what activities are we talking about here? What is the first step, second, all the way through, and then just even the clarifying, what happens if a person, like this, I think popped up here, this at the end of the year, what happens if a person is already serving something, whether it's the good conduct or the, you have to sit for 30 days for sports. What if they're already serving that and then they get one? So do they run at the same time, or do they run one after the other? Like, there was nothing in there to say that, so we put that in there.
Did we just send one out at, for when they signed up for school? Has there been any that, because evidently some sports have already signed one?
Right, that's, cross country, he had 4 sheets, and one of them was
Good conduct.
good conduct, and I have to sign it too, saying I've read it and
Yep.
agreed. Mhm.
Does that one say prom or?
That one probably is the old one, and I don't know that it has the whole policy on there, to be honest.
Yeah, I doubt it has a whole policy. I think it says I will adhere to the good conduct
It's a
policy.
one-page document.
Yeah, it says I will
just
follow
says
the good
we've read
conduct
it
policy.
and we will follow it, yeah.
Yeah, so,
Now, do we include FFA and FBLA?
yep.
Those are
It's on the
actually-
list.
We should.
FBLA is not on
For-
there, FFA is.
Oh, yeah, FBLA is not in there, I mean, I could add that, I guess I forgot that one.
Well, I mean, that would be consistent with FBLA and FFA are very similar.
They're close.
I forgot about that one. See, that's why Rich and I wanted more people involved.
Okay, the motion on the floor is to approve the handbook to include the good conduct policy, eliminating all dances from that. Are there any further questions or discussion? Yours?
Will it take effect today?
Yeah.
Or,
Anything else? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So the policy will not include dances.
Okay, now the second part of that. Rich has made a request when we're dealing with good conduct policies that would be handed out at the second semester of last year, because you had students that didn't have an opportunity to serve them. What the state said is the state said if you had, and Heidi, tell me if I'm wrong with this, but if you had an academic suspension, for instance, for failing a class, those were waived, or the requirement that you didn't get enough credits, those were waived. He is asking that we waive whatever punishments were left from the end of last year, so when you start this year, you start fresh. His justification is usually a kid would play golf or track or baseball. You know, you missed all of these things, and now I'm carrying that burden or that load into this year. That is his request. I am okay with that request because everybody missed 2.5 seasons. But I told him we need to take that to the board and have the board make that decision, or the board can decide, no, we want to carry those over.
So you're looking for a motion to approve waiving any unserved penalties left over?
Yep, from last year.
So moved.
second,
It's been moved and second to waive any unserved good conduct policy penalties from last year. Are there any questions or discussion?
so that just includes just ones that are unserved. So if they would get another one this year and they had 2 last year,
Then they go on to second one. It's not forgiven. They go to step 2.
Okay. just wanted that.
Yep.
So people didn't think they
They're
were
in the
starting
same, they're in
over.
the same place in the grid. They
They're in
just
the
didn't
same
have
place
the-
in the
Just
they
your
would-
penalties are.
Yep.
Yeah, we're waiving only
The
the
penalty
penalty.
part, yeah.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, item number 18, NCCS agreement.
This is the North Central Consortium School, what used to be the Rabner Center. We have a deal with 20-plus schools that we rent the building, they staff, and we have the ability to send kids there. What you do is you really pay for 1 to 1.5 kids. If you don't use it, they send that portion back. If you use more, then you pay for it. In a typical year, we will have 2 to 3 kids there, so I recommend you approve it. It's been a good deal for us, and it's for both boys and girls.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and second to approve the NCCS agreement. Are there any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Item number 19, SBRC request for asbestos removal.
Page 48 is the bill we have. How asbestos removal works is we pay it out of general, and then we can go back and ask for spending authority to cover it. I would recommend you approve this. We'll have more coming. If we do the construction up here, the first thing we have to do is get the asbestos out of the building, so that'll be the next thing we'll do is we do more asbestos work, so. I would recommend you approve this.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and second to approve the SBRC request for asbestos removal. Are there any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item number 20, schedule for back to school.
This is a constantly changing document, so I don't even have it available. Here's where we are now. In the past, we would bring new teachers in Monday and Tuesday. We would take the new teachers out for lunch on Monday. On Wednesday, we'd start with a breakfast, then we'd have the red apple luncheon. And then we'd have activities that we do throughout the day. Every time we have a meeting, we're pulling more and more out of that. Right now, we will not have the red apple luncheon this year. The chamber has been very generous. The chamber has did some fundraising and got $50 worth of gift cards for your chamber bucks for your teachers to use for classroom supplies in the community. They will be passing those out. They also have worked with the Johnson Foundation to get school supplies for each building. So each building will have a fund where they can go get school supplies for students that don't have them. But we will not have the morning breakfast. We will not have the red apple luncheon. Traditionally, I will meet with all the staff together. I'll give my speech, then we'll go through the insurance. Instead of doing that, we're sending all the people to their individual buildings, and I will travel with that. Nicole will go with me to get the paperwork signed that we need. And we, other than a few things from the medical side that we need to cover, most of it's going to be the schools and the teachers working in their classrooms to prepare for not only this year, but what do we have to do if we have to switch to an online version or a hybrid version. So as of right now, new teachers will come in Monday and Tuesday. All teachers will come Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. There are no large gatherings. There are no large dinners or lunches or anything like that. The main thing is preparing for school and your contingency plan if we get kicked out, how we're going to serve the kids. So I also believe that's kind of what our first 3 days are always half days. That's where we're going to discuss the issues we're having with the logistics of trying to get everybody back and what are we going to do if we run into issues. So
No action.
No
just information. Item number 21, board member reports.
I got nothing.
Item number 22, superintendent's report.
just a few of the additional things we haven't talked about. We are adding a custodian. We had a half-time custodian. We're moving that to a full-time custodian. That will actually move one up to the daytime, then the new one will take the nighttime position. That will allow for an additional cleaner to be on staff. One of the things is when we get our buses coming from routes, how we can go through and clean those out, doing extra rounds in our restrooms and our hallways. Lunchrooms, we are not going to fold up the tables, so the PE will, middle school and elementary will share the PE. We'll share the elementary gym for PE, which means our lunchroom tables will stay down all the time, which means we don't have to spend 2 hours a day putting them up and taking them down. We can take that time to do for cleaning. So we are adding additional staff for the custodian side for that. Hand sanitizer, we have purchased bulk hand sanitizer. The bottles are what's harder to get. So we're asking people to bring the bottles and we'll refill the bottles. The plan is still to make sure that every classroom has a bottle that we can go in the 55-gallon drum, fill it up and keep using it. We did get 16 gallons of hand sanitizer from the state early on that came out of Iowa Prison Industries. I just bought 2 55-gallon drums of it. We don't know how long that's going to last. We still are going to encourage hand washing because our theory is if you continue to use the hand sanitizer, your hands are going to dry out, and that's not going to be a long-term solution. So we need to use that when we can't do anything else, but it is not totally the answer. I think the rest of the stuff I've talked about, right? As of right now, we got the email today that Wright County is over the 15%. Last week, Humboldt and Webster County were over 15%. I don't see that going away for a little while. I don't see the adjustments we're making for school going away throughout. I said we're planning for a year. I had teachers ask if they could wear scrubs because they have to wash them. I said that is fine. wear what you need to be protective and feel comfortable. I can't always control what the kids are going to do or what the people are going to do, so you have to protect yourself. Let us know what you need for protection, so you can feel comfortable, so you can teach your class. Any questions on what we're doing to prepare for the year or anything in general?
Are we adding a part-time nurse?
We are adding an assistant nurse.
Okay.
And so what the assistant, I'm glad you said that because I didn't put on there. What the assistant nurse is our high school nurse does half day at the middle school and half day at the high school. That has always worked, and if they needed to, they ran back. One of the concerns we had this year is if they're at the high school and somebody is sick, we're gonna have a clean room and a dirty room. Clean room is if I come in and I got a hangnail and I need a Band-Aid versus if I come in and I'm throwing up, they're going to the dirty room. We think that we need coverage or somebody, an adult there to separate them out and make sure we're doing that right. And so that assistant nurse, which is just an associate position, will be opposite of where the high school, middle school nurse is.
Okay.
Any luck with the math teacher?
Nope, not yet.
My son's schedule said Mrs. Amundsen on it, so I kind of figured she
Well,
was
I'm
not
not-
coming back, but
I'm changing, I'm just leaving it until the last minute, because if I have to merge it all then to Mr.
I
Hoagland.
say, does he have to teach it all then at this point?
Yeah, and so if I merge it all to him, then I have to undo it all, and that's a circus. So I'm just leaving it until the last minute, because the hope is I can just go in and very easily change a teacher name to Mr. or Mrs. New Teacher, yay.
We chase them down every day when they come across. What you're finding more and more of is, one, you get a list served that they say these people are interested, but they don't want to move. You know, they're living in Iowa City, they're living in Des Moines, and they don't want to move and they don't want to travel. You also, I don't know what it is now, but you have over 30 openings for high school math right now.
They've
So
been like that all summer.
yeah, it's not, it's been something we've talked about before to where I will hire somebody a year in advance and put them in a position. That's what I did with Zach, just to get them in the district, to move them in. We've got to continue to do that because we still have a elementary special ed that went unopened because we had no apps for it. Your high school math, we've had no real apps for it. We had one that we were talking with early and they just quit communication because they got another job somewhere.
So can one math teacher do it all, actually? I mean, I don't know how many sections and things and how that works.
What it'll have to be is the math itself is gonna be, kind of like blended learning, where the kids will do a lot of their practice on Khan Academy. And then he'll do direct instruction and then support if they don't understand. But when they're gonna, instead of, the traditional is you got the worksheet and you sit and do it and whatever, that'll be eliminated. It'll be on the computer for practice. Khan Academy is excellent it's probably the best math program that for virtual. They have it in Spanish as well, so that's nice. But it'll give feedback, it'll give little videos on how to do something. So what he'll do is he'll help them and teach them how to do stuff. And then Khan Academy will reinforce. And then the hope is that we'll have like a long-term sub. That's a little tricky too, not gonna lie. That will be mostly consistent, that can kind of help manage the students in the room that are not with him. So it'll flip every other day. They'll be face-to-face. They can always get help from him daily during study hall. But in terms of when they actually get to have direct instruction from him, it'll be every other day at this point.
And if you don't get somebody for first semester, you will immediately start working to see who student teaching in the field to see if
We
you can
do
draw them for
have
second semester.
one student teacher in the middle school for math, right, starting still?
I think so.
We're wooing her, I just want you to know that right now. We haven't met her, but we're wooing her.
Did you want to comment on the academy?
I gave you academy numbers. This is updated for this year. As you can see, we utilized academy very, very well. We actually had, the Elizabeth Hill Foundation is funding 3 positions. Our Foundation of the Future gave us some money to fund additional positions. We only are required to have, I believe it's 21 positions. And, but I fill up every position that we can have as our classes are getting bigger. We'll continue to do that. But I wanted to show you that it's very successful here for us.
I think their overall numbers are down though, 57.
I talked to Colleen today and she said they're starting to fill in a little bit more. It's usually around that 60 to 65 number though. It's designed for 110. What you have is Clarion Goldfield buys 20 seats, Eagle Grove buys 20. It used to be 25 and they readjusted it when Humboldt came in. So I don't know exactly what that is. Fort Dodge buys 40 seats. I think that's down to 35. St. Ed's is included with that. Humboldt has 10 and Webster City has 25 seats. If you have a seat, if you don't have the number of kids that you have seats, you are still paying for those spots. So what they'll do is they'll take our extra spots and take them from the other schools so they don't get stuck out as hard. But that's only if you hit that 110 number. So they're filling up they're paying for spots they're not filling. In the long run, the continuation of it is going to be in question if you don't get other schools that are sending kids there. It's been great for us. We'll do what we can to keep it here for our students, but I think there's 5 years left of it and we'll have to keep an eye on it to see how it works.
Can you fund those other ones if you don't have the outside funding, or how would that work for us?
It just costs us money.
But
So
could you do it, or?
in a growth pattern, it's easy.
Depend.
If you get to where you're not in a growth pattern and you're spending more than you're bringing in, you cut that back.
Okay.
So, but it helps when you have those other ones. And most of them are set up for scholarships for kids to pick up college credits. It fits very nicely into that.
What's the cost per seat?
$2,400, and then you have books on top of it. Am I correct with that? Does that sound right? And there's a thing that's built in, like a 3% inflation on it.
So the reality is it's a half day, so we're at $6,700 per kid.
Yeah.
So could you fund it? Yes, probably, because it's less than half of that per student cost.
Well, if you didn't have it, right now you'd have 33 kids back here that
Right.
you'd be paying an instructor for
Right.
3 periods to try to fill.
So it,
I just didn't know if we got a lot more, like I
You
said,
get
we
some
have a good
sharing
interest
money
in
with
it.
that too, so the amount comes down.
so it is really a good deal, especially
Right.
for Eagle Grove.
When we get to classes of 85 and 90, that number will go up. You know, your smaller classes are still at your top end. I think maybe your senior class
I
might be your
think because
smallest
we
class.
had some kids that wanted, like obviously the application timeframe was right as we closed. So some of that, kids maybe that would have applied that didn't. I mean, we had a handful that, well, can I do the county? Too late now, dude, So we had some this fall already.
And a lot depends, the usage depends on the district's administration, on how they value this opportunity or don't value it. And in some of the districts, it has not been a priority. Now with some of the administrative turnover in some of the other districts, the numbers may pick up.
Well, the other thing with this too, if you look at the health strand, we used to every other year offer health. So those kids would have been pulled out and now we're putting them back in. We always had to pay for an instructor that came out of that health strand too. So
I
that
think
is
they're
not a big switch.
looking at expanding. I don't know that they're gonna get it done this year, but in ag.
The Ag Academy,
is
Webster
that-
City has pushed hard for an Ag Academy. I don't know where it's at. It's not a reality this year. I know that much. So, part of that is funding and part of that is the longevity of, can you get enough kids I saw where Fort Dodge was pushing to bring back their own program. Now that was a student petition. I don't know what that had for support, but it is something we're looking at and we would look at that too if they had it most of it would be designed to where we do the first couple of years and you send advanced students into an academy like that. So, any other questions for me?
I think Scott said 13 kids and Heidi said 10 kids that have opted. Do we know elementary numbers? at that?
15 that are going to be with us, and then there were 3 that have said that they're gonna go through some kind of a third.
They're going completely homeschool.
Okay, okay. I just was curious on that number there.
And mine's 10-ish.
10-ish, that's right.
I think we'll know more when we come. I honestly
I'll put the
can't tell you what our enrollment is until
It's like-
the first day
Till
of
we
school.
get in
and
there.
see
Yep. I just was curious. Okay.
How was the online? How has that been?
So registration?
Registration.
We've got some issues. Part of it is because we didn't pay that extra 10,000, you didn't get online forms. I will probably switch that to online next year so you can type on them versus print it out because it wasn't real convenient when you still had to print out 4 forms and go fill them out by hand versus try to put that online. we have people use it. Hopefully we get through some of those glitches, but next year we probably will look at the more advanced version just to make it completely online versus we've got, if you look, we got a Dropbox out there where people can come and drop papers, and I don't know what our success rate with that is, but,
Hey, Jess, I got a question on that. Is there a Spanish version to that, or was it just, because we had, at regular registration, it was a large Hispanic population that showed up.
are you
So,
talking
like,
the health form?
just online registration?
Every single portion of it was translated.
So they could have been, I was just
Yeah,
wondering
most of
if
it
that
should have
was
had
an
a second
option.
sheet of it. What I didn't like about it was when we say online, my theory as a parent was I could go in and do everything online. All I could really do is say Casey's coming to school. Then I had to print off a health form, and it was in English and Spanish, and I had to fill out the health form. Then I had to print off the lunch form, and then I had, you had to print off all these forms. When I went over to registration, one of the things was people don't have all the printers in their house. That some do, but not everybody does. We have issues with just even having internet connectivity, let alone printers. So I think we have to look farther to say if you're gonna do it online, we probably are gonna have to spend the money and do it all.
If I needed a form, I did not fill one out. I only did the
Yeah.
online
I was gonna say-
stuff. So I didn't print a form, so
Yeah.
but it said I was complete.
Well, you're complete on this, but
Right, but
you
that's
don't
where I'm
have the,
wondering if
And
there
then
was,
all the athletic forms are sitting on the high school counter.
Oh, those are done.
You know,
but you
that
don't
was-
have the health form updated, which is required, so then the nurse will contact you to say you need a health form. You gotta do it every year.
Yeah.
That's the,
Yeah,
So-
But I
Amanda
think
did
I had to
ours
do a
on
health one
vacation
for the
and said,
sports.
oh, it's done.
Did we have a health one for the sports?
Yeah, and then there's a different one. I
See,
don't-
that's where I'm,
Too much paper?
anyway, we'll probably
I'll
look
have
at
to
the
look. I
advanced.
may not be
option.
done then.
You're right.
And if I'm not, then there may be a lot like me.
It's super awesome when someone comes in when I'm the only one in the office because I suck. I can't answer all that stuff. I don't know what you need.
Did you say you had, sorry,
I tried
this
to
is
navigate
off
it and I
topic.
thought I
You
had
had
it,
15
but I wasn't
students in
sure.
the elementary that are doing online
Yeah.
instruction through us?
Yep.
Okay.
I can double check that here. But I'm pretty
It
sure.
does, you don't have to be specific. I just kind of wanted to clarify for my own.
Anything else for Jeff?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Then move second to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Uh,
Thank you for